Hello, everyone. This is Murtaza Bhatti. I'm a professional accountant. Um, as you know, at Insta Accountant, we do a lot of tax returns for drivers, rideshare drivers who are doing Uber or Lyft, or the delivery drivers, UberEats, Skip the Dishes, DoorDash, and the parcels. So in this video, because the time is almost here. It's almost, Christmas time is almost coming. So after December, we're gonna get a lot of calls asking questions. So I'm just making this video to answer those common questions. So the first one is gonna be like, I know that there is gonna be a lot of drivers who entered into this line of business and this year in 2023, and I am sure that they might have had done some research on how their taxes are going to look like. Um, Actually, we have a lot of videos explaining Uber and rideshare driving, the tax-related matters to those people. Um, so I'm just gonna kind of talk about those questions and give you the right answers, as a tax practitioners who kind of specialize in Uber, in doing Uber tax returns, people who do rideshare. So the first thing, I'm just for the newcomers, if you're already an Uber driver, if you were driving in the previous years, you know how your taxes work. But for the new drivers, I will just briefly explain how the taxes are going to look to you for this year. So basically, if you are an Uber driver, and I'm just referring to you guys as Uber driver, um, for that matter, you could be Lyft or any other kind of driver who is doing either passengers or uh, you know uh, delivery like parcels or food delivery. Okay, so the first thing as drivers, as Uber drivers, you have to understand is that you are a self-employed person, right? What is a self-employed person? You know, let's put it simply. You work on your own schedule. You work on your however many hours you want to work. You work, and you pick your own time. Um, so that's basically a self-employed. You're not being employed by any employer. Uh, so you're your own boss. For the taxes, self-employed is a category, right? Um, and your taxes are going to be different when we compare those with people who are employed. And you could be employed as well as self-employed. So for example, if you're doing Uber as a side gig, or you have a part-time job, or you've had any job during the year, and now you're doing Uber full-time or part-time, whatever. So you've got two types of income. One is employed as an employee, and the second one is self-employed, which you are as a driver, as an Uber driver. Um, so if you were employed, you're gonna get a T slip, a T4 slip from the employer, and you're gonna take that to the accountant, and that's it, right? Um, but that's not the case with self-employment, right? The biggest difference is that when you're an employee, what the salary that you draw, the salary that you get from that employment, usually certain deductions are carried out on your salary, and the employer by law are required to do certain deductions on your salary and send that money to the government, right? And at the end of the year, when you're filing your tax return, um, that T4 slip tells that how much deductions had been made out of your salary. It could be income taxes. It could be CPP or EI or any other deductions. So all that is on that T4 slip. And as an employee, you just have to take that T4 slip to the accountant and he'll do the rest. But in the case of self-employment, you are not getting any tax deducted at source. Nobody is deducting any tax on your behalf. So that means that you will have to report your income at the end of the year, and the applicable tax rates, whatever, or the applicable taxes will be applied on that income at the year end, at the end of the year. So you might have to pay those taxes once you file your tax return. So that's the difference. For employee, you've been paying some tax, if not all. When you get a refund, it means you overpaid the tax, so you're getting a refund. But in case of self-employment, you've had been deducting no taxes at source, and you might have to pay tax at the end of the year after you file your tax return. So that's the difference between employed and a self-employed. And for the self-employed, he has to, in the tax return, you have to tell about your income. Let's say I made $100 driving Uber. And also you can deduct the expenses which you incurred to make that $100. So for example, I had to take care of expenses worth $55. So I can deduct that 55. I have to mention that $55 in the tax return, and the balance amount, which is the difference, 100 minus 55, that is $45, is the taxable income. The tax rate will be applied on that $45, not the $100. You see the difference? And that all that calculation is happening on your tax return. In the case of an employee, all that was done by the employer. But over here, all that is to be done by you or your accountant on the tax return as a self-employed. There is going to be one tax return, income tax return, right? We call it income tax return, but it's basically income and benefits tax returns, right? So there's not going to be like, so for example, if you were doing a job as well as Uber, you don't have to file two income tax returns. It's going to be one T1, which technically it's called T1. So you have to file T1, but it will have two kinds of incomes and related working calculations in it, one for the employment and one for the self-employment. So for self-employed, we add a form. It's called T2125 form. I have actually made a video how to fill that T2125 form. You can check that out. It's there on the channel. So that T2125 form has to be filled in properly to assess what your taxable income out of your self-employed activity. So basically, as a self-employed, you're kind of operating as a business because you have income and you have expenses, which means that you have to kind of do your bookkeeping. Bookkeeping means, in simple terms, you need to know what your incomes are, and you need to document and record and keep supporting to those record of your expenses. Very, very important, because that's going to save you tax. So that's what it is. So as I explained, that for self-employed, this is how your income tax, this is how you're viewed as from the tax or CRA. That is how they view you as a self-employed, right? So you have to take care of your taxes yourself at the end of the year. The second question, basically, yeah, let's say that's the second question. So it's basically, a lot of people would call us and ask, hey, I am, is doing Uber a good thing. Is it a good side hustle? So if you're already doing a job and you want to make some extra money and you're looking for a gig, Uber or Uber Eats or any food delivery or passenger rideshare service, doing that is not a bad idea. The reason for that is that obviously you will have that flexibility and that independence, that freedom to do that work anytime, and as soon as you switch on the app, you are ready for work, and you'll start making money, right? So it's good whenever you have time on a weekend, on a Saturday night, early morning, whatever time suits you, you just start doing it, and it will kind of start making money for you. And you just need to have a car and registered with the app service and everything, so it's a good thing. From the tax perspective, if we talk about that, I would say that it is good. The reason for that is that on one side you have your employment income. This income, so for example, you have an employment which is paying you, let's say, $100,000 annually, right? So you are going to be paying tax on that $100,000. Now you start doing Uber on the side, and you make $20,000 in Uber. So that is your additional income, gross income. The benefit is that you can deduct your expenses from that $20,000. So let's say the expenses like your car, your phone, this, that, all those expenses. I can talk about those later because that's in the list as well. So I'm going to briefly talk about those expenses because I have a detailed video on the expenses. So you can check that out. So if you deduct all those expenses out of that gross income, it might come down to, let's say, $6,000. So that $6,000 is going to be added to the $100,000, and we are assuming that all of that $100,000 is taxable. So your taxable income will become $106,000, right? The benefit is that you've had the cash flow of $20,000, and you were able, number one, you got access to a cash of $20,000. Number two, you were able to deduct expenses, which normally you won't be able to do that, and related to your car and phone and this and that, right? So you were that. And then the biggest benefit was that you always had that freedom. Whenever you wanted to start making that money, you started it, and you there was actually no investment. You already had a car, you were driving it. You had time, and you just invested your time, and it started giving a return on that time right away. So you didn't have to invest and wait for customers and this and that. All that is being done by the Uber. The app is providing you all that. It's a good thing, especially for for part-timers. I cannot say that okay, it's going to save you tax and this and that, but I've seen out of experience that it suits more to people who do it part-time as compared to people who do it full-time. And if you're doing it full-time, you gotta be doing it really full-time, then it's beneficial. Otherwise, it's more beneficial tax-wise to people who have an employment and do it on the side. Next question, let's say HST, GST, HST implications for Uber drivers. So again, this is a detailed topic, but I'm just going to briefly talk about it because right now my audience is people who haven't done Uber previously and who have no experience with Uber taxes, and people who have already been doing it, they know. But this is just for the people, for those who are just going to be filing their tax returns as self-employed or Uber drivers for the first time. So HST, and I am referring to, because we are located in Toronto, we do tax returns for BC, Alberta, but most of our clientele comes out of Ontario, so I'm gonna be talking about Ontario only, but part of it applies to other provinces as well. So in Ontario we have HST, 13%. As a rideshare driver, if you're doing Uber rides or you're doing Lyft, it is mandatory for you to have HST account, HST number, right? So what does that mean? That means is that so for example, if you did one ride worth $100, you have to charge HST on that, right? And like you won't be doing it, Uber will be doing it for you. So let's say you got Uber sent you $113. So it means that $13 is the HST and the $100 is for your ride. Now that makes you eligible for claiming ITCs as well. What does that mean is that for example, your expenses for making that $100 or 113 were $50. So you're gonna be able to claim the HST that you paid on that $50. Let's say that is $7, right? So you're gonna be able to claim that $7 as well. So the net HST that you're gonna be remitting to the government, to CRA, will be $13 minus $7, which is $6. So this is mandatory for people who are doing rideshare. It's not mandatory for people who are doing food or parcel delivery. It becomes they have to register for HST if their income is going beyond $30,000. So if it goes beyond $30,000, they have to start charging HST, and they then will be able to claim HST on their inputs as well, like their expenses as well. So if you're making more than $30,000, you have to make sure that you have HST, you are registered with HST, and you provide that income to Uber or any other platform so that they can start deducting HST on your services, and they tell you at the end of the year how much was your income, gross income, and what was the HST component. Like how much, in my example, like Uber will tell you that, okay, I collected $113 on your behalf, and out of that $13 is the HST, which is basically a liability towards the government. So it's not your income. Remember that HST collected, the HST that you collect is not your income, it's a liability. But you can deduct the HST that you paid on expenses from that liability and then make the payment to the government. The next one is that a lot of people ask us, why do they have to file HST return? So again, I just talked about it, but briefly, if you are doing ride share, then you have to file HST return. It's mandatory because you fall under the category of taxi and limousine service. So it's mandatory for you to register for HST, to collect HST, and to file HST return. Don't confuse it with the income tax return. A lot of people have this confusion in their mind that, okay, business return is the same as HST return. No, as an Uber driver or a rideshare driver, you have to file two different type of tax returns. One is your income tax return, which I discussed earlier, which will tell how much, which will talk about that $100 that you collected, right? And the other tax return is the GST HST return, which is going to talk about the $13 and the $7 that you paid on your expenses, right? So these are two types of tax returns, two different, right? So your accountant is going to explain that to you in detail, but don't forget that if you're an Uber ride driver, you make sure that you're filing 2 tax returns. Otherwise, CRA is definitely going to come after you and ask for you to file your HST return, outstanding HST return. And in that time, most of the times, 95%, HST is something that you have to pay. So what happens is that you ignored the HST return, and when CRA sent you a letter, then you file your HST return, and at that time you are facing a penalty and you're facing a lot of interest on the outstanding amount. So make sure that you, when you are doing your income tax return, you also file your HST return. Remember, 2 returns. One is your income tax return, and the second is the GST HST return. 2 returns you have to do. Very common question, what kind of expenses? Again, I have a video on this in detail, what kind of expenses you can claim, right, as deductions. Briefly, so since and I'm talking about let's say if you're doing a delivery service, you're doing UberEats on a bike, right? Doesn't matter. You can still claim your expenses, right? It's not only for the people who are using cars. You can claim your expenses as a bike rider as well. Okay, so the expenses, for example, you're doing Uber or UberEats, where you're gonna be all the expenses related to your car. What could be those? Your the monthly payments you're making for the car. If you're making no payment for the car, you bought it for cash, the depreciation on it, the fuel, the gas that you're paying, that. If it's electric, the electric charge, that. Insurance, your insurance, driver insurance, maintenance of the car, all those expenses, like even the minute expenses, the bigger ones, any repairs, winter tires, mats, wiper blades, windshield washer, this and that, all those expenses. Supplies, your car charger, your phone, cleaning, any cleaning supplies you have. You have a gum and water for your passengers. Yes, definitely. Air fresheners, you name it. Expenses like Shopify subscription, Apple subscription, this and that. Yes, related to your car, related to your business, definitely. So you're the best. These are the common expenses. You're the best judge. Okay, but, I have this kind of expense as well. A little bit of meals and coffee. Yes, you can claim that depending on how many hours you're driving and stuff. So you are the best judge who knows that, okay, this is an expense and it is for my business. One thing that you have to keep in mind is that we only claim the business portion of expenses. What does that mean? Because you're using your own car, your personal car, right? So for example, you drove the car 1,000 kilometers during the year, right? And out of that 1,000 kilometers, 800 kilometers were driven for Uber, for the business. So that means that you are gonna be claiming 80% of the insurance expense, 80% of the gas expense, 80% of the car payments, finance or lease payments, whatever you're making. So you're just claiming the business portion of it. That's how you're going to calculate the business percentage, okay? Very important question. How to track my expenses? Do I have to track my expenses? Oh, definitely yes. 100%. Very important. The tracking of your expenses is going to save you money. It is going to save your expenses. Okay? So yes, don't just, and every expense, like as I said, even the minor, the tiny expenses, you are a business, okay? Think like a businessman. Okay, this is my cost, this is my business the expense. I need to note it down somewhere. I need to keep a track of it. so that when I'm filing my tax returns, I remember that, okay, I have to deduct all these expenses out of my income to bring my taxable income down. Okay, your taxable income, if for example out of $100 your expenses, if you're claiming $40 expenses, $60 is your taxable income. And if you were tracking your expenses and now your expenses are $55, then $45 is the taxable income on which you're going to pay tax. So it's very important to track your expenses. And for that purpose, since we've been in this business for a long time now, we actually developed an app for Uber drivers and self-employed people. Because we know that you guys are on the go, right? So what you need to do is you just, this is a receipt. You just take a picture. You bought a gas for $50, got the receipt. Just take a picture. That's it, and submit. So ZoomBooks will basically record that expense, categorize that expense, and save the receipt. Because a lot of drivers, they don't save their receipts, or even if they do, they would just have a bag or a box and just put the receipt in there. That's not going to help. So use some app. So you can use our app. It's called ZoomBooks. So ZoomBooks is going to do the bookkeeping for you. And so you just take the picture of the receipt, and the receipt is safe now, digitally saved. If CRA asks for it two years down the lane, you can just go in there, download the receipt, and send it to CRA. The second thing is that it will categorize the expenses properly and your income and everything. So you're able to see, okay, how much did I spend on fuel this week? How much did I spend on during the month on meals and this and that, car maintenance. So you will have all that visibility into your financials. That's very important, which actually takes me to the next question, because a lot of people would call me and ask, okay, is Uber a profitable thing to do? Now, that's a very subjective question, right? It depends, right? And for that, the first thing is that you're tracking your income and expenses properly, right? So your income is very well tracked by Uber, but you're not keeping a record of your expenses. That is why I recommend using ZoomBooks, because that is developed for you and by accountants, right? We have put our, we knew the problems. That's why we've made it very easy for you guys. So you can just put in, you have to save your receipts, and unless you are putting, you are tracking your expenses on a daily basis, after a month, I tell you, it's going to give you an insight that you're going to say, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Oh, how could I drink this much coffee, during the month? Something like that. So it's going to, because you're not recording it. So once you record it, you're going to be able to know how profitable it is for you, right? So the question of Uber, is it profitable or not? It depends on many factors, right? But you have to look at it, because there are a few expenses like your car's wear and tear, the depreciation. That's something, it's not going out of your pocket, but you're using your car. It's getting the miles on it, right? So so the point is that it is profitable, and I cannot give you a general percentage, but it is profitable. It depends how many hours you're doing it, and how much work you're getting, all those things. Surge plays a lot of a role in that profitability thing, right? Because let's say you're going 1 kilometer and the fuel cost is 50 cents. Now you get a ride for that 1 kilometers for $5, and in Surge it is like $8. Your cost is still this 50 cents, right? But if your revenue is like $8, it is, and not $5, you're just making $3 more than that. So it depends. That's why I'm saying that use that ZoomBooks app so that you can track your expenses properly. One more question. Yeah. So I don't have, like a lot of people will say, hey, I don't have receipts to my expenses, but I've been using a debit card or a credit card. I tell you that's not going to work. So if CRA opens an audit, right, and if CRA asks you to prove a proof of some expense, credit card statement or bank statement is not a proof for an expense. They are looking for the exact invoices or receipts for that expense. Okay. Now you might say that, oh, let's say I bought a coffee. I don't have a receipt for that. I know, but still you have to have the CRA is going to ask you for proper receipts. So if you're saying, okay, I spent $1,000 on gas, they're going to say, okay, send us receipts for that gas. So that's why I'm saying that you should use some kind of an app to kind of keep those receipts, because I know it's a challenge for you guys to keep receipts physically, because there is so many and they get mixed up and you can't sort them out, right? So it's better to use some app, maybe Zoombooks. I would recommend it because it's ours. So to kind of have that record always ready for CRA. And by law, you're required to keep the receipts for 6 years. In case of an audit, we can always send that bank statement or the credit card statement to the auditor that, okay, this is the proof. Most of the times, they do not entertain that as a proof of transaction, right? So keep your receipts. Be very. This is very like I have to kind of it is very very important. I have to emphasize on this point, because if you are claiming deductions, CRA is assuming that all those deductions, like all those expenses, have a proof, and they can ask for that proof anytime. So that is why the receipts or invoices are very important. Okay. So yeah, I think those are basically most of the questions that we receive. If there is any question you have in your mind, you can write that down in the comment section. I try my best to answer all the questions that come in. Um, and if you like the video, just hit like and subscribe to the channel for, I keep making videos on and provide legit information whatever I can. All right, have yourself a great day and drive safely. Take care. Bye.